Noob skipped down the sidewalk, his little feet barely touching the ground as he moved with a joyful bounce. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow on the suburban street. Birds chirped merrily from the trees, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Noob's heart was light, and his excitement was palpable. He clutched a giant cookie in one hand, a treat his mom had given him for the journey. The cookie was almost as big as his face, and he couldn't wait to take a big bite out of it. It was chocolate chip, his favorite, and the smell of it made his mouth water. His backpack, bursting with toys, bounced on his back with every step he took. Inside, he had packed all his favorite things: action figures, a toy car, a stuffed dinosaur, and even a small puzzle. He wanted to show Grandma all his treasures and maybe even play with them together. Today was a special day. Noob's eyes sparkled with excitement, and his wide grin showed just how much he was looking forward to the adventure ahead. He had been counting down the days, and now it was finally here. Noob was going to visit Grandma. He had heard so many wonderful stories about her house, and now he was going to see it for himself. The thought of all the fun they would have together made his heart race with anticipation. He had never been to her house before. It was a place of mystery and wonder in his mind, filled with all sorts of magical things. He imagined it to be like a treasure chest, with surprises waiting to be discovered in every corner. His mom said it was full of surprises. She had told him stories about the secret garden in the backyard, the attic full of old toys, and the kitchen that always smelled like freshly baked cookies. Noob couldn't wait to explore every inch of it. She told him to be on his best behavior. Noob nodded seriously, promising to be polite and careful. He knew how important it was to make a good impression, especially on his first visit. But Noob was excited, and a little bit clumsy. He couldn't help it. His excitement made him a bit wobbly on his feet. He hoped he wouldn't trip over anything or accidentally knock something over. He hoped he wouldn't break anything. The last thing he wanted was to ruin something special at Grandma's house. He took a deep breath and reminded himself to be extra careful. As he approached the house, Noob saw a cat napping on the porch swing. The house was just as charming as he had imagined, with a white picket fence and colorful flowers lining the walkway. It had fluffy orange fur and a grumpy expression. "Hello, kitty," Noob chirped. The cat looked like it had been disturbed from a very pleasant nap. The cat opened one eye, glared at him, and went back to sleep. Noob giggled at the cat's grumpy demeanor. He thought it was funny how the cat seemed so unimpressed by his cheerful greeting. Noob giggled and rang the doorbell. He could hardly contain his excitement as he waited for the door to open. He bounced on his toes, eager to see Grandma's face. He could hear the sound of shuffling footsteps coming from inside. The anticipation built up inside him, making his heart beat faster. The door swung open, revealing a plump, smiling woman with a head full of white curls. Her eyes twinkled with joy as she saw Noob standing there. "Noob, my dear boy, you're here!" she exclaimed, pulling him into a warm hug. "Come in, come in!" Her embrace was warm and comforting, and Noob felt all his nervousness melt away. He knew he was in for a wonderful time at Grandma's house. Grandma's house smelled like freshly baked cookies. The aroma wafted through the air, wrapping around you like a warm hug the moment you stepped inside. It was the kind of smell that made you feel instantly at home, no matter where you came from. It was a cozy, cluttered space filled with all sorts of interesting things. Every corner seemed to hold a new surprise, a new story waiting to be discovered. The furniture was a mix of old and new, each piece with its own unique character. There were vases full of colorful flowers, each one more vibrant than the last. The flowers seemed to dance in the sunlight that streamed through the windows, adding a touch of nature's beauty to the room. Stacks of books with funny titles were scattered around, inviting you to pick one up and lose yourself in a world of imagination. Some of the titles were so quirky you couldn't help but chuckle. Pictures of Noob's family covered every surface. Each photo told a story, capturing moments of joy, laughter, and love. It was like a visual history of their lives displayed for all to see. Noob's eyes widened as he took it all in. There was so much to see, so much to explore. It was like stepping into a treasure trove of memories and curiosities. He spotted a cuckoo clock on the wall. It was an old-fashioned clock, the kind you don't see much anymore. A little bird popped out and cuckooed 3 times. The sound was cheerful and whimsical, adding to the charm of the room. Noob laughed, his cookie momentarily forgotten. The unexpected delight of the cuckoo clock had captured his attention completely. "Grandma, your house is amazing!" Noob exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with wonder. He couldn't believe how magical everything felt. He spun around trying to take everything in at once. There was so much to see, so much to experience. It was like being in a wonderland of memories and stories. Grandma chuckled. "It's a bit much, isn't it?" she said, her voice filled with warmth and amusement. She loved seeing Noob's reaction to her quirky home. "Come on, let's get you settled," she said, leading him to a comfy armchair. The chair was soft and inviting, the perfect place to relax. She handed him a glass of milk, the perfect complement to the cookies he had been enjoying. The milk was cold and refreshing, a soothing contrast to the warm, sweet cookies. "Now tell me everything," she said, her eyes twinkling with curiosity and love. She wanted to hear all about Noob's adventures, his thoughts and his dreams. It was moments like these that made her home truly special. After his snack, Noob set off to explore the house. He wandered into a room filled with delicate china dolls and antique teacups. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, making the glass and porcelain sparkle. Noob gasped. The dolls were dressed in fancy clothes, their painted faces frozen in delicate smiles. He reached out a finger to touch one but quickly drew back. He didn't want to break anything. Suddenly his foot caught on a rug. He stumbled forward, arms flailing. There was a loud crash! Noob looked back in horror. One of the teacups lay shattered on the floor. Noob, horrified by the broken teacup, decided to look for Grandma. He knew how much she loved that teacup, a delicate porcelain piece with intricate floral designs. It was her favorite, and he felt a pang of guilt as he stared at the shattered pieces on the floor. He found her in her bedroom, trying to put on a necklace. She seemed to be having a hard time with the clasp, her fingers fumbling as she tried to secure it around her neck. Noob hesitated at the doorway, unsure whether to interrupt her or not. He was about to confess about the teacup, but something else caught his eye. His gaze shifted from Grandma to the nightstand beside her bed. On the nightstand, sitting in a glass of water, was a set of teeth. They were gleaming under the soft light of the lamp, looking almost surreal in their pristine condition. They looked just like Grandma's, only smaller. Noob's eyes widened. He had never seen dentures up close before, and the sight of them floating in the water was both fascinating and a little eerie. He'd never seen anything like it before. The thought of teeth being removable was a new concept to him, and he couldn't help but wonder how they worked. "Grandma, what are those?" he blurted out, pointing at the glass. Grandma turned around startled. She had been so focused on her necklace that she hadn't noticed Noob standing there. She followed his gaze and let out a surprised yelp. Her eyes widened as she realized what he was pointing at. "Oh my goodness, where are my teeth?" she exclaimed, her hand flying to her mouth. Noob's jaw dropped as he saw that her mouth was indeed empty. Grandma didn't have any teeth in her mouth. He burst into giggles, the absurdity of the situation hitting him all at once. He had never seen Grandma without her teeth before, and it was both funny and strange. Grandma, after a moment of stunned silence, started laughing too. Her laughter was infectious, and soon they were both laughing so hard that tears streamed down their faces. The broken teacup was forgotten, at least for the moment, as they shared this unexpected and hilarious moment together. Section 5. Feather Fight. The sound of their laughter echoed through the house, reaching Noob's next destination, the attic. He pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust motes dancing in the single beam of sunlight coming from a small window. Old furniture covered in white sheets loomed in the shadows, trunks overflowed with forgotten treasures, and in the corner Noob spotted a feather duster, its plumes long and fluffy. He grabbed the feather duster and started waving it around, giggling as the feathers tickled his nose. The dust, disturbed after years of slumber, rose up in angry clouds, engulfing Noob in a choking fog. Section 6. The Great Cookie Caper. Coughing and spluttering, Noob emerged from the attic, his face covered in dust. He wiped his eyes, trying to see through the grime. That's when he smelled it. The warm, delicious aroma of freshly baked cookies. He followed his nose to the kitchen, where he found Grandma just taking a tray of cookies out of the oven. They were perfect. Golden brown and studded with chocolate chips. Noob's stomach rumbled. Without thinking, he reached out and grabbed a cookie, popping it into his mouth. It was still warm, the chocolate chips melting on his tongue. He closed his eyes in bliss. This was the best cookie he'd ever tasted. Section 7. A Sticky Situation. His moment of bliss was short-lived. The cookie, still hot from the oven, stuck to the roof of his mouth. He tried to pull it off with his fingers, but it wouldn't budge. He opened his mouth wide and stuck out his tongue, hoping the air would cool it down. Grandma, realizing what had happened, rushed over to help. "Oh dear Noob, what have you done?" she chuckled, gently prying the cookie off his palate. Noob, his mouth finally free, looked at the mangled cookie in his hand with a mixture of disappointment and embarrassment. He had ruined the perfect cookie. Section 8 Cleanup Crew of 1. After the cookie incident, Grandma decided it was time for a break. She settled on the porch swing, a glass of iced tea in her hand. Noob, feeling guilty for all the trouble he'd caused, decided to make amends. He grabbed a broom and started sweeping up the broken china in the living room. He dusted the furniture, his tongue sticking out in concentration. He even managed to catch the grumpy orange cat and give it a hug, though he received a scratch for his efforts. By the time Grandma came back inside, the house was sparkling clean. Well, almost clean. There were still a few feathers floating in the air, remnants of Noob's attic adventure. Section 9 All's Well That Ends Well. Grandma, seeing Noob's efforts, smiled. She ruffled his hair and handed him a fresh, perfectly cooled cookie. "You're a good boy, Noob," she said, "even if you are a bit clumsy." Noob, his mouth full of cookie, grinned. He had learned a valuable lesson that day. Even when you make mistakes, everything can be fixed with a little effort and a lot of love. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, Noob knew this was just the beginning of many chaotic, fun-filled visits to Grandma's quirky, wonderful house.